My sister wouldn't stop mocking me for being cheated on. Then her dream wedding blew up in her face. You know what your problem is? My sister Chloe said while trying on her wedding dress. I think you're just not very smart. You didn't even see the signs. I was helping her with the buttons even though she'd spent months making cruel jokes about my breakup. My ex had been sleeping with his coworker for half a year before I found out, and Chloe thought it was the funniest thing ever. Maybe if you'd been better in bed, he wouldn't have needed to find someone else. She continued while admiring herself in the mirror. I bit my tongue because I was her maid of honor, and Mom would kill me if I ruined her wedding week. Chloe loved telling everyone at her engagement parties about how clueless I was about my cheating boyfriend. She actually thought they were just working late together. She'd announce to her friends while I stood there holding her purse. Can you imagine being that naive at 25? She'd bring it up at family dinners and work events and even told the story to her fiancé Parker's parents the first time she met them. The difference between us is that I know how to keep a man interested, she said while we were picking up her wedding cake. Parker worships the ground I walk on. Some people are just naturally better at love, she'd say loud enough for me to hear while loading gift boxes. Others get cheated on and then stay single for 2 years because they're too damaged to try again. The best part of getting married is I never have to worry about getting humiliated, Chloe told a crowd during her rehearsal dinner. Because my sister taught me exactly what a relationship looks like when it implodes. The whole wedding party laughed while I forced a smile and tried not to cry. Then the wedding day arrived and Chloe looked stunning in her designer dress that cost more than my car. She kept talking about how perfect everything was going to be, and how this was the happiest day of her life. Not everyone gets a fairy tale wedding, she said, while the makeup artist finished her lipstick. Some people are destined for cheating boyfriends and loneliness. I was just counting down minutes until the day was over and I could block her number. The ceremony started perfectly with Chloe walking down the aisle like a princess, while everyone oohed and awed over how beautiful she looked. Parker was waiting at the altar looking handsome in his tuxedo. Then the time came for him to read his vows. Chloe went first, talking about love and admiration and never giving up. Parker went next. But instead of taking out a folded piece of paper like Chloe, he took out his phone. Did he really write his vows while playing 8-ball pool? I thought. But I was wrong. Before we continue, Parker started. I think everyone should know what kind of person I'm marrying, he said. Last week I overheard Chloe talking to her friends and I thought it was worth recording. Chloe froze as Parker Bluetooth connected his phone to the church sound system. I think our guests deserve to know the real Chloe. She tried to protest, but the recording had already started playing, and Chloe's voice filled the room clear as day. Being honest, Parker is a boring loser, but his family has money. So I'm just going to marry him, then change everything about him after I'm rich, her voice said through the speakers. He's pathetic in bed too. He has no personality, and I have to pretend I love him more than that hot guy at work, but at least I'll never have to work again. 200 wedding guests sat in stunned silence as the recording continued. I could never actually love someone that ugly. Chloe was screaming for Parker to turn it off, but he let the whole thing play. By the time it was done, Chloe's $300 makeup was smeared from crying, and her wedding dress was stained in running mascara. Parker was taking off his microphone and walked out of the church, leaving Chloe alone at the altar in front of everyone she'd ever known. The same friends who'd laughed at my cheating story were now staring at her in horror and disgust. Chloe spent the reception crying while guests left early and avoided eye contact. She kept insisting it was all taken out of context. This isn't fair because at least you actually loved your boyfriend, she sobbed while I helped her out of her veil. Everyone thinks I'm worse than you now because you were innocent and I was using him. The scandal followed her everywhere just like she'd made sure mine followed me. Her coworkers knew about the wedding disaster and would whisper whenever she walked by. Her friends completely cut her off. She had to move back in with our parents because Parker kicked her out. That's when Chloe showed up at my apartment looking completely unhinged with dark circles under her eyes and her hair unwashed. This is all your fault, she said, pushing past me into my living room. Everyone keeps saying how sorry they feel for you and how evil I am because you were the innocent victim and I'm the gold digger. Her logic was twisted, but her desperation was real. People are taking your side when I should be the one getting sympathy. She pulled a knife out of her purse and pointed it at me with shaking hands. The only way to fix this is if people remember you as the sister who got murdered instead of the sister who got cheated on. I can't move. Chloe is standing 5 feet away from me holding a kitchen knife, and her hand is shaking so badly I'm more scared she'll stab me by accident than on purpose. My phone is in my back pocket, and I need to figure out how to call for help without making her lunge at me. She's still talking about how this is all my fault, and how everyone thinks she's evil now because of me. I force myself to take a slow breath and keep my voice calm. I tell her that killing me won't fix her reputation. It'll just prove everyone right about her being unstable. Chloe starts crying harder and yelling that I ruined her life by being the good victim while she's the villain. Her logic makes zero sense, but I'm not about to argue with someone holding a weapon. She keeps saying over and over that people need to remember me as the murdered sister instead of the cheated on sister. I slowly reach for the throw pillow on my couch and set it on my lap like I'm just trying to get comfortable. Then I carefully slide my phone out from under me and hide it under the pillow. I dial 911 without looking at the screen and pray I hit the right numbers. I leave the line open and speak loudly so the operator can hear everything. I say Chloe's name and tell her she needs to put the knife down before someone gets hurt. Chloe starts pacing back and forth across my living room and ranting about how Tyler made her look like a gold digger in front of everyone. She says her friends won't talk to her and her coworkers whisper about her, and she lost everything because of that stupid recording. I keep my voice steady and tell her that hurting me won't bring back her wedding or her friends. I'm desperately hoping the 911 operator is sending help right now because I don't know how much longer I can keep Chloe talking. She's getting more worked up instead of calming down, and the knife is still pointed at me. My whole body wants to run, but I know that'll make her chase me. Suddenly there's loud knocking on my door and I hear Adriana's voice calling out, asking if everything is okay in there. She says she heard yelling through the wall. Chloe spins toward the door and for a second the knife isn't aimed at me anymore. I see my chance and start moving slowly toward the kitchen where there's a back exit. The knocking gets louder and more insistent. Adriana says she's calling the building manager if I don't answer right now. Chloe looks panicked now instead of angry, and I can see her face change as she realizes how bad the situation actually is. She's looking between me and the door like she can't decide what to do. Then I hear sirens outside getting closer and closer. Chloe's face goes completely white. She drops the knife on the floor with a clatter and runs toward my door. She yanks it open so hard it slams against the wall and nearly knocks over Adriana as she bolts down the hallway. I collapse onto my couch and I can't stop shaking. My whole body is shaking, so hard my teeth are chattering. Adriana rushes into my apartment asking if I'm hurt and if Chloe did anything to me. She sees the knife lying on the floor where Chloe dropped it and her eyes go wide. She immediately understands what just happened and wraps her arm around me. The sirens are getting louder and I can hear them pulling up right outside my building. Officer Nolan Contreras arrives at my door within 2 minutes with another officer right behind him. They find me sitting on my couch with Adriana next to me, and the knife still lying on the floor. I try to explain what happened, but I can barely get the words out because my whole body is still shaking. Officer Contreras is calm and tells me to take my time. He carefully photographs the knife from different angles and takes pictures of my apartment. His partner sits down across from me and starts taking my statement. I tell them everything about the wedding disaster, and how Chloe showed up at my apartment blaming me for ruining her life. I explain how she pulled the knife out of her purse and pointed it at me. I tell them about the threat she made about people remembering me as the murdered sister instead of the cheated on one. Officer Contreras writes down every detail and asks me specific questions about exactly what Chloe said and did. Officer Contreras pulls out an evidence bag and carefully picks up the knife with gloved hands, sealing it inside while his partner photographs the exact spot where it landed. He turns to me and explains that what Chloe did counts as assault with a deadly weapon, even though she didn't actually stab me, and that threatening someone with a knife is a serious crime that carries real consequences. I'm still shaking as I give him my parents' address since that's the only place Chloe has been staying since Parker kicked her out after the wedding disaster. The officer writes everything down in his notebook and tells me they'll go there next to try to locate her and get her statement about what happened. Adriana is sitting next to me on the couch, and Officer Contreras asks if she'd be willing to give a witness statement about what she heard and saw. She immediately says yes and explains that she heard yelling through our shared wall, then heard me say something about putting the knife down, which is when she started knocking on my door. She tells him that when Chloe ran out of my apartment, she looked completely crazy with wild eyes and messy hair, and that she nearly knocked Adriana over in her rush to get away. Officer Contreras writes down every detail and tells me that having a witness who can back up my story is really important for building a strong case. He asks if I want to pursue criminal charges against Chloe, and if I want to file for a restraining order to keep her away from me. I'm so tired I can barely think straight, but I know the answer is yes to both because I genuinely believe Chloe might come back and try to hurt me again. My whole body feels heavy and my hands won't stop shaking as I tell him I want to do whatever it takes to stay safe. Officer Contreras explains the process for filing a police report and how to apply for an emergency protective order through the courthouse, and he gives me his business card with his direct number written on the back. He tells me to call him immediately if Chloe tries to contact me in any way, whether it's showing up here or calling or texting or anything else. His partner hands me a victim services pamphlet with information about counseling and legal help, and they both tell me I did the right thing by calling for help. After they leave with the bagged knife, I immediately lock my deadbolt and then push my couch against the door, even though I know that's not actually going to stop anyone who really wants to get in. Adriana watches me struggle with the couch and offers to stay the night on my couch so I'm not alone, and I almost start crying because I'm so grateful for her kindness. I tell her yes please because there's absolutely no way I can sleep alone in this apartment tonight knowing Chloe might come back. We move the couch back to its normal spot so Adriana has somewhere to sleep, and I give her a pillow and blanket from my closet. She asks if I want to talk about what happened, but I shake my head because I don't have the energy to go through it all again right now. I go to my bedroom and lie down fully dressed on top of my covers because I'm too exhausted to change into pajamas. Every time I close my eyes, I see Chloe's face twisted in anger, and the knife pointed at my chest. I check my phone and it's already past midnight, but I'm too wired to sleep. I lie there in the dark, listening to every sound in the building, my heart jumping every time I hear footsteps in the hallway, or a door closing somewhere. Around 2 a.m., I finally drift off, but I wake up again at 3 a.m. from a nightmare where Chloe came back and this time she actually stabbed me. I'm sweating and my heart is racing. So fast I think I might throw up. I get up and check that my bedroom door is locked, and then I check the front door deadbolt even though I know Adriana is right there on the couch. I go back to bed but I can't fall asleep again until almost 4 a.m., and even then I keep having these half-awake moments where I jolt up thinking I heard something. When my alarm goes off at 6 a.m., I feel like I haven't slept at all. My eyes are burning and my whole body aches. I drag myself out of bed and find Adriana already awake making coffee in my kitchen. She asks how I slept and I tell her the truth, which is barely at all. She gives me a hug and tells me that's completely normal after what I went through. At 8 a.m., my phone starts ringing and I see it's my mom, Nina, calling. I answer it and she immediately starts screaming at me for calling the cops on my own sister. She says Chloe came home last night crying and told them that I attacked her first, and she was just defending herself, which is such an obvious lie I can't even find words to respond. My mom is yelling about how I'm tearing this family apart, and how could I do this to Chloe when she's already going through so much after the wedding disaster. I try to explain that Chloe literally pulled a knife on me and threatened to murder me, but my mom talks right over me saying I'm exaggerating and making things worse than they were. Then my dad Vaughn gets on the phone and he's using his calm, reasonable voice, which somehow makes me even more angry. He says that Chloe was just upset and didn't mean anything by it, and that I should understand she's been under a lot of stress lately. I tell him she threatened to murder me, and he actually says that she was obviously exaggerating because that's just how Chloe gets when she's dramatic. He tells me I'm overreacting by getting the police involved, and that we should handle this as a family instead of making it a legal issue. I hang up on both of them because I can't listen to another second of them making excuses for Chloe's behavior. My phone buzzes with a text message, and I see it's from Tyler, Chloe's ex, who exposed her at the wedding. He's asking if I'm okay because Chloe posted something weird on social media last night about betrayal from all sides. He says he's not trying to be my friend or get involved in family drama. He just wants to make sure I'm safe since he knows how unstable Chloe has been acting. I actually appreciate that he bothered to check on me even though he has no reason to care about what happens to me. Another text comes in, and this time it's from my coworker Bowie asking if I'm coming into work today. I realize I need to tell my job what's happening because I can't just pretend everything is normal. I call Bowie instead of texting back, and when he answers, I tell him the basic version about my sister threatening me with a knife and the police getting involved. He's quiet for a second, and then he tells me his sister went through something similar with a violent ex, and he immediately offers to help me find a therapist because he knows how important that was for his sister's recovery. I tell him yes please because I'm barely holding myself together right now, and I need professional help to process everything that's happening. Bowie texts me back within 5 minutes with a recommendation for a therapist named Jasmine Ward, who apparently specializes in family trauma and has same-day availability for crisis appointments. I look her up online and call her office right away, and the receptionist gets me scheduled for an appointment that same afternoon at 2 p.m. I book the session because I know I can't handle this on my own anymore, and I need someone who actually knows what they're doing to help me figure out how to stay safe and deal with my family's complete betrayal of my trust and safety. I force myself to go to work the next morning even though I barely slept and my hands won't stop shaking. Bowie takes one look at me when I walk in and immediately asks if I'm okay, and I tell him I'm managing, but it's obvious I'm not. My manager Sarah pulls me into her office around 10 a.m. after watching me stare at my computer screen without typing anything for 20 minutes. She closes the door and asks me directly if I'm safe, and something about the way she says it makes me start crying right there in her office. I tell her the basic version about my sister showing up at my apartment with a knife and threatening to kill me, and Sarah's face goes completely white. She tells me to take whatever time I need and that my job will be here when I'm ready to come back. Then she asks if I want building security to know about the situation in case Chloe tries to show up at the office. I say yes immediately because at this point I don't trust Chloe to stay away from anywhere I might be, and the idea of her walking into my workplace makes me feel sick. Sarah walks me down to the security desk herself and explains the situation to the head of security, who takes down Chloe's name and description and promises to call the police if she shows up. My therapy appointment with Jasmine is at 2 p.m., and I spend the time between now and then sitting in the break room trying to calm down. I drive to Jasmine's office in a part of town I've never been to before and sit in the waiting room filling out intake forms about my mental health history. When Jasmine calls me back, she's younger than I expected, maybe in her early 30s, and she has this calm energy that makes me feel like I can actually talk to her. I spend most of the session crying while I explain the years of Chloe mocking me about being cheated on, the wedding disaster with Tyler exposing her, and then the knife incident 2 days ago. Jasmine listens without interrupting and takes notes, and when I'm done she tells me this isn't just about one bad moment. She says it's about a pattern of Chloe treating me terribly, and my family enabling her behavior instead of holding her accountable. Jasmine asks me about my childhood and what my relationship with Chloe was like growing up. I start talking and realize that Chloe has always been the golden child who could do whatever she wanted without consequences. Every time she was mean to me, our parents would tell me to be the bigger person and not make waves. I was supposed to ignore it when she broke my things or told lies about me or made fun of me in front of her friends. Jasmine writes something down and tells me that basically taught Chloe she could treat me however she wanted, because I would always take it, and our parents would never punish her. 3 days later, Officer Contreras calls me and says they went to my parents' house to talk to Chloe, but she refused to come out of her room. My parents told the police I was exaggerating and that it was just a sister fight that got out of hand. I feel like I'm going to throw up because they saw the police report. They know what happened and they're still protecting Chloe. Officer Contreras sounds tired when he explains that without Chloe actually stabbing me or making additional threats, it's hard to arrest her right away. But the report is filed and I have options, and he strongly suggests I apply for a restraining order. He gives me the number for legal aid and tells me to mention his name when I call because they'll take it more seriously. My parents won't stop calling and texting, trying to get me to drop this whole thing and stop trying to ruin Chloe's life even more. My mom sends me a long text about how Chloe is struggling and needs support from her family, not police involvement. My dad calls and leaves a voicemail saying I'm being vindictive and that real sisters forgive each other. I finally text them back that Chloe ruined her own life by being a terrible person and threatening to murder me, and then I block both their numbers. Chloe posts a long Facebook rant that night about how I called the police over nothing and always have to make everything about me. She writes that I'm jealous of her and trying to destroy her reputation because I can't handle that she was getting married while I'm still single. Several of her remaining friends comment supporting her and saying they can't believe I would do this to my own sister. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. Reading the comments makes me feel crazy until I remember that these people have no idea she pulled a knife on me. I take screenshots of everything Chloe posts just in case I need it later for legal reasons. Jasmine told me during our second session that documenting everything is smart because it shows Chloe's mindset and her complete lack of remorse for what she did. Tyler messages me again, offering to send me the full recording he played at the wedding if it helps with legal stuff. I take him up on it and he emails me the audio file within an hour, along with a message saying he hopes I stay safe. A week after the knife incident, I'm walking to my car after work, and I see Chloe sitting in a vehicle across the street just watching me. My whole body goes cold and my heart starts racing so fast I think I might pass out. I immediately turn around and go back inside the building, heading straight for the lobby where the security desk is. I call Officer Contreras from there with shaking hands and tell him Chloe is outside watching me right now. Officer Contreras shows up 15 minutes later with another officer, and I'm still sitting in the lobby shaking. He asks me to describe exactly what I saw, and I tell him about Chloe's car parked across the street and how she was just sitting there watching me. The building security guard pulls up the footage from the parking lot cameras and we all watch it together on his monitor. The timestamp shows Chloe's car arriving over an hour before I got off work, and she just sat there the entire time staring at the building entrance. Officer Contreras rewinds it twice to make sure we have clear shots of her license plate and her face visible through the windshield. He tells me this is textbook stalking behavior, and I need to stop putting off the restraining order because Chloe is escalating. He writes up another report documenting the stalking incident and gives me a copy along with the security footage saved on a thumb drive. Before he leaves, he makes me promise to call legal aid first thing in the morning, and he writes down the direct number for the intake coordinator. I barely sleep that night because every car sound outside makes me think Chloe came back. The next morning, I call legal aid at exactly 9 a.m. when they open and explain the situation to the intake person. She puts me on hold for a few minutes, then comes back and says, Attorney Savannah Lozano had a cancellation and can see me at 2 p.m. that same afternoon. I take the rest of the day off work and spend the morning organizing all my evidence into a folder. I print out screenshots of every cruel Facebook post Chloe made, the police reports from both incidents, and I copy the security footage onto my laptop. At 2 p.m., I walk into the legal aid office and Savannah turns out to be this sharp woman in her 30s who immediately makes me feel like she actually cares. She sits me down and spends over an hour going through everything while taking detailed notes. She reviews both police reports and asks me specific questions about the knife incident and the stalking. I show her all the screenshots of Chloe's social media posts where she's playing victim and blaming me for everything. Then I play her the recording Tyler sent me where Chloe talks about Parker being ugly and boring and just wanting his money. Savannah leans back in her chair and tells me I have an extremely strong case for a temporary restraining order. She explains that the combination of the weapon threat, the stalking behavior, and Chloe's public statements about me show a clear pattern of harassment. We spend another hour filling out the paperwork, and Savannah helps me write detailed descriptions of both incidents. She asks me to be very specific about what Chloe said when she threatened me with a knife and exactly how long she stalked me in the parking lot. By 4 p.m. we have everything ready, and Savannah walks me over to the courthouse to file it. The clerk processes our paperwork and tells us a judge will review it within 24 hours. Savannah says given the weapon involvement she expects we'll get the emergency order approved. Sure enough, the next morning Savannah calls me to say the judge granted an emergency temporary restraining order. Chloe has to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times, and she'll be served with the papers within 48 hours. Savannah explains that this is just temporary and we have a hearing scheduled in 2 weeks for the permanent order. She warns me that I'll have to testify in front of a judge about everything Chloe did, and Chloe will probably show up to the hearing. Savannah tells me to expect Chloe to lie and play victim, so I need to bring all my evidence and be ready to stay calm while she tries to make me look bad. I spend the next few days feeling this weird mix of relief and anxiety because I have legal protection now, but I also have to face Chloe in court. 2 days later, I get a text from my dad saying Chloe was just served with restraining order papers and my parents want to talk to me immediately. I don't respond because I know exactly what they're going to say. An hour later, my mom leaves me a voicemail and she's literally screaming into the phone about how I'm destroying this family. She says Chloe is devastated and humiliated and how could I do this to my own sister? My dad sends me this long email that night about how disappointed he is in my vindictiveness and how I'm making everything worse instead of trying to help Chloe heal. I read both messages twice and feel this hot anger building in my chest because they still don't get it. I forward both the voicemail and the email to Savannah the next morning. She calls me back within an hour and says this is harassment and I should document everything they send me. Savannah helps me draft a response through her office letterhead telling my parents that all future communication needs to go through my attorney. The letter makes it clear that contacting me directly to pressure me about dropping the restraining order is inappropriate and needs to stop immediately. My therapy appointment with Jasmine is that afternoon, and I tell her about the restraining order and my parents' reaction. She asks me how I'm feeling about all of it, and I admit I'm having panic attacks every time I see a car that looks like Chloe's. Jasmine teaches me this grounding technique where I name 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, and 1 thing I can taste. She says it helps pull me back to the present moment when I start spiraling. We spend the rest of the session talking about how my family trained me to prioritize Chloe's feelings over my own safety. Jasmine points out that my parents have always expected me to be the bigger person and let Chloe get away with treating me badly. She says their reaction to the restraining order is just more of the same pattern where they protect Chloe no matter what she does. 3 days after getting served with the restraining order, I get a message request on Instagram from an account I don't recognize. The profile has no posts and no followers, and the username is just random letters and numbers. I open the message and it says, "You're going to regret this." My stomach drops because I know immediately it's Chloe. I screenshot the message right away and send it to both Officer Contreras and Savannah with a note explaining the fake account. Officer Contreras calls me back in less than an hour and says this is a clear violation of the temporary restraining order. He asks me to forward him the screenshot and any other information about the account. Savannah emails me saying the same thing, and that we'll be adding this violation to our evidence for the permanent restraining order hearing. The next day, Officer Contreras goes to my parents' house with the new evidence, and this time they actually arrest Chloe for violating the restraining order. She's released the same day on her own recognizance, but now there's an active warrant if she contacts me again. Officer Contreras calls me after the arrest to let me know, and he sounds satisfied when he tells me Chloe seemed genuinely scared when they put handcuffs on her. 2 days later, Savannah calls me and says my parents hired a lawyer for Chloe who just contacted her office. The lawyer tried to negotiate me dropping the restraining order in exchange for Chloe agreeing to stay away from me voluntarily. Savannah tells me she shut that down immediately, and made it clear we're proceeding with the hearing as scheduled. She says we're also going to bring up the Instagram violation at the hearing, and it actually strengthens our case because it shows Chloe can't control herself even with legal consequences. 2 weeks before the hearing, I'm barely functioning. I wake up every morning around 4 a.m. with my heart racing and can't fall back asleep. Every car that drives past my apartment makes me flinch. Every footstep in the hallway makes me grab my phone ready to call 911. I keep the curtains closed all the time now because I'm scared Chloe might be watching from somewhere. Adriana notices how bad I'm doing and starts checking on me every single day. She texts me in the morning to make sure I'm okay, and texts me at night before bed. Sometimes she just shows up at my door with coffee or takeout food because she knows I'm not eating properly. After work, she walks me to my car in the parking garage even though it's out of her way. She stands there and waits until I'm locked inside with the engine running before she goes to her own car. I don't know what I'd do without her because my own family won't even talk to me. At work, I'm jumpy and distracted and everyone can tell something is wrong. Bowie pulls me aside one afternoon and tells me that HR wants to set up a safety plan for the office. He says they're worried Chloe might show up and cause problems. I meet with the security director in a conference room and it's embarrassing having to explain that my own sister threatened me with a knife. The security director is professional about it though. He takes a photo of Chloe from my phone and adds it to the building's do not allow entry list. He programs the photo into the security system so the front desk staff will recognize her. He gives me his direct number and tells me to call 911 first if I see her anywhere near the building, then call him second. He also offers to walk me to my car after work if I ever feel unsafe. The whole thing makes me feel like I'm in a movie or something, except this is actually my real life. The day before the hearing, Savannah calls me and asks me to come to her office. I take a half day off work and meet her at the legal aid building. We sit in a small conference room and she goes over exactly what's going to happen in court. She tells me the judge will ask me to testify about everything that happened. I'll need to describe the years of mockery, the wedding disaster, and especially the knife incident. She warns me that Chloe's lawyer is going to try to make me look bad. He'll probably claim I'm overreacting or that I did something to provoke her. He might say I'm jealous of Chloe, or that I'm lying about how serious the threat was. Savannah tells me the most important thing is to stay calm and just stick to the facts. Don't get emotional or defensive. Just tell the truth about what happened and let the evidence speak for itself. She shows me all the evidence we're bringing, including the police report, the photos of the knife, Adriana's written statement, the security footage of Chloe stalking me in the parking lot, and screenshots of the Instagram message. Looking at everything laid out like that makes it feel more real. This is actually happening. I'm actually taking my own sister to court. That night I can't sleep at all. I lie in bed going over everything in my head. What if the judge doesn't believe me? What if my parents convince him I'm exaggerating? What if Chloe's lawyer makes me look crazy? I finally give up trying to sleep around 6 a.m. and just sit on my couch staring at my phone. Jasmine texts me at 6:30 asking how I'm doing. I tell her I'm freaking out and she offers to do an emergency phone session. At 7 a.m. she calls me and we spend 40 minutes going through her grounding techniques. She has me name 5 things I can see, 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear, 2 things I can smell, and 1 thing I can taste. It helps pull me back to the present moment instead of spiraling about all the what-ifs. She reminds me that I have evidence and witnesses, and that the truth is on my side. She tells me to focus on just getting through today, and not worry about anything beyond that. At the courthouse, I arrive early with Savannah. We sit on a bench in the hallway outside the courtroom. My hands are shaking, so I sit on them to keep them still. Then Chloe shows up with our parents and her lawyer. She's wearing this conservative dress that makes her look innocent and stable, like she's going to church or a job interview. Her hair is neat and she has minimal makeup on. She looks nothing like the unhinged person who showed up at my apartment with a knife. Our parents are dressed up too, standing on either side of her like bodyguards. My mom keeps her arm around Chloe's shoulders. They sit on a bench on the opposite side of the hallway. I refuse to look at any of them. I keep my eyes on the floor or on Savannah's legal pad. I can feel them staring at me though. I can hear my mom whispering to Chloe. The hearing starts and we all file into the courtroom. The judge is an older man with gray hair who looks tired. I have to testify first. I sit in the witness box with my hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. Savannah asks me questions and I answer them as clearly as I can. I describe how Chloe mocked me for years about being cheated on. I tell the judge about the wedding disaster and how Tyler exposed her at the altar. I explain how she showed up at my apartment looking completely unhinged and blamed me for ruining her reputation. Then I describe the knife. How she pulled it out of her purse. How she pointed it at me with shaking hands. How she said the only way to fix things was if people remembered me as the murdered sister instead of the cheated on sister. The whole time I'm talking, Chloe is sitting at the other table crying and shaking her head like I'm making it all up. Her lawyer objects a few times saying I'm being dramatic. He asks me questions trying to make it seem like I provoked her or exaggerated the threat. He suggests I'm jealous of Chloe and using the legal system to get revenge for the wedding humiliation. It's so ridiculous I almost laugh, except nothing about this is actually funny. Savannah presents all our evidence next. She hands the judge the police report, and he reads through it carefully. She shows him the photos of the knife that Officer Contreras took. She submits Adriana's written witness statement describing what she heard and saw. She plays the security footage from my apartment building showing Chloe sitting in her car watching the entrance for over an hour. She shows him screenshots of the Instagram message from the fake account. The judge looks more and more angry as he reviews everything. His expression gets darker with each piece of evidence. Then it's Chloe's turn to testify. She gets up on the witness stand and immediately starts crying. She says she never meant to hurt anyone, and that she was just having a mental breakdown after her wedding fell apart. She claims she doesn't even remember pulling out the knife because she was so upset. Her lawyer argues that she needs therapy and support, not a restraining order. He says punishing her will just make her mental health worse. My parents both testify next. My mom says I'm blowing things out of proportion because I've always been jealous of Chloe. My dad says it was just a sister fight that got out of hand, and that I'm overreacting by involving the legal system. They both insist Chloe would never actually hurt me. The judge listens to everything, and then he makes his decision. He grants a full 1-year restraining order. He tells Chloe that if she violates it even once, she will be arrested immediately with no warnings. He orders her to complete anger management counseling and attend regular therapy sessions. He says the criminal case for the assault with a deadly weapon will proceed separately through the prosecutor's office. Chloe starts sobbing and my mom gasps. Walking out of the courthouse afterward, I feel this weird mix of relief and sadness. Relief because I got the protection I need. Sadness because I just had to get a restraining order against my own sister. My parents won't even look at me as we leave through different exits. I see my mom crying while hugging Chloe in the parking lot. My dad has his arm around both of them. They're surrounding her with comfort and support while I walk to my car alone with just Savannah. That image tells me everything I need to know about whose side they're on and whose side they'll always be on. A week after the hearing, the prosecutor's office called me to discuss criminal charges for the knife incident. The woman on the phone explained that they could charge Chloe with assault with a deadly weapon, but they were willing to offer a plea deal if she admitted what she did and accepted probation with required counseling. I told her I needed to talk to Savannah before making any decisions, and she gave me until the end of the week to respond. Savannah met with me the next day at her office and laid out all my options on her desk. She explained that a plea deal meant I wouldn't have to testify in a criminal trial, where Chloe's lawyer would try to make me look bad, and my parents would probably testify against me again. The plea deal would also put the assault on Chloe's permanent record, which would protect me if she ever tried anything else because judges would see she had a history of violence. I was so tired of court and legal stuff, and the idea of another trial made me want to throw up. I told Savannah I wanted to accept the plea deal because I just needed this whole thing to be over. She called the prosecutor right there from her office and confirmed I was agreeing to the terms. 2 weeks later, Chloe took the plea deal in front of a judge. I didn't have to be there, but Savannah went and called me afterward to tell me what happened. Chloe got 2 years probation, 100 hours of community service, required anger management classes, and the restraining order stayed in place for the full year. If she broke any part of her probation, she would go straight to jail with no second chances. Savannah said Chloe cried through the whole thing, and my mom had to help her walk out of the courtroom. For the first time since the knife incident, I felt like there were actual real consequences happening, instead of everyone just making excuses for her. 3 days after Chloe's sentencing, I got an email from my dad with the subject line, "Final Communication." I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. The email said that I was dead to them as a daughter for ruining Chloe's life over a misunderstanding. My mom had added a paragraph at the bottom saying I was no longer welcome at any family events, including holidays, and that they would tell extended family I had cut them off, not the other way around. Reading those words hurt worse than I expected, even though I knew they were choosing Chloe over me. I sat on my couch staring at the email for probably 20 minutes, just feeling this heavy sadness in my chest. Then I called Jasmine for an emergency phone session, and she talked me through it. She reminded me that my parents were never going to choose my safety over protecting Chloe, and that their decision to disown me said everything about them and nothing about me. After we hung up, I went through my phone and blocked both my parents on everything. I blocked their numbers, their emails, their social media, and even blocked my mom's friends who might try to contact me for her. When I finished, I sat there for a minute and realized I could actually breathe easier without waiting for the next awful message from them. Adriana knocked on my door that evening and asked if I wanted to get dinner to celebrate the restraining order being finalized. We went to this Italian place near my apartment, and she told me how proud she was that I stood up for myself when my whole family was against me. She said watching me go through the legal process had been inspiring, and that she hoped if she ever needed to set boundaries with her own family, she would be as brave as me. It felt good to have someone actually see what I'd been through instead of making excuses for Chloe. Work became the one stable place in my life where people actually cared about how I was doing. My manager pulled me into her office about a month after the restraining order and told me she was giving me a small raise. She said she was really impressed with how I'd handled everything while still showing up and doing my job well. Bowie started checking in on me regularly to make sure I was okay, and even brought me coffee on days when I looked extra tired. The security team kept Chloe's photo up at the front desk and told me multiple times to call them immediately if I saw her anywhere near the building. 3 months after the restraining order, I was doing so much better in my weekly therapy sessions with Jasmine. We were working on understanding why I had accepted Chloe's mean treatment for so many years and how I could build healthier relationships going forward. Jasmine helped me see that I'd been trained since childhood to put Chloe's feelings above my own safety, and that breaking that pattern was going to take time and practice. She also helped me process the grief of losing my parents, even though they were the ones who chose to cut me off. Around that same time, Jasmine recommended I try a support group for people dealing with toxic family members. I was nervous about going, but I showed up to the first meeting at a community center near my apartment. Hearing other people's stories was incredible because I realized I wasn't alone or crazy. One woman talked about how her sister had threatened her with a weapon, and their parents took the sister's side exactly like mine did. Another person shared about getting a restraining order against a family member and dealing with the guilt, even though they knew it was necessary. Everyone in that room understood what it felt like to be blamed for protecting yourself from someone who was supposed to love you. Tyler reached out one more time about 4 months after the restraining order. He sent me a message saying that Chloe had been trying to contact him through mutual friends asking about me and wanting to know where I live now. He wanted to warn me in case she was planning to do something. I thanked him for letting me know and immediately forwarded his message to Officer Contreras, who said he would make a note in the file. But there wasn't much they could do unless she actually violated the restraining order. I spent the next few weeks extra careful about checking my surroundings and making sure my doors were locked. 6 months after the knife incident, I was finally sleeping through most nights without waking up in a panic. I had upgraded all my apartment locks to heavy-duty deadbolts and installed a security camera that sent alerts to my phone if anyone approached my door. My life looked completely different now without my toxic family in it. I had Adriana and my coworkers and my therapy sessions and the support group. I had a job where people respected me and a home where I felt safe. Chloe was still out there somewhere finishing her probation and probably still blaming me for everything, but she couldn't get to me anymore. The restraining order had 6 more months left, and I was already planning to renew it because I didn't trust that she had actually changed. A few weeks later, I heard through people we both know that Chloe had finished her anger management classes. Someone who knew her from the program mentioned she was still telling everyone that I overreacted and made everything worse for her on purpose. She wasn't taking any real responsibility for pulling a knife on me or stalking me at work. The restraining order had 6 months left before it expired, and I was already planning to file for a renewal because nothing I heard suggested she had actually changed. I talked to Savannah about it and she said we could start the paperwork 3 months before the expiration date to make sure there was no gap in protection. Around that same time, my relationship with Adriana had grown into something I never expected. She invited me to dinner with some of her friends one Friday night, and I was nervous about meeting new people after everything that happened. But her friends were amazing and normal, and when I mentioned my situation with my sister, one of them said her brother had threatened her too, and she understood how hard it was. For the first time in my life, I had people around me who didn't think it was normal to mock someone for being cheated on or threaten them with knives. They treated me like my safety mattered and my feelings were valid. I started hanging out with them regularly, and it felt incredible to have a friend group that wasn't connected to my toxic family. Then one Saturday morning, I was sitting in my apartment drinking coffee and looking at my calendar planning my weekend. Chloe had sent me a message through a burner email the day before, with some long explanation about how I ruined her life and owed her an apology. I forwarded it to Officer Contreras without even reading the whole thing and blocked the email address. Then I went right back to planning which hiking trail to check out with Adriana's friends and what groceries I needed to buy. I realized while sitting there that I felt genuinely safe and happy. My apartment was my space where no one could hurt me. My friends were people who actually cared about me. My job was stable and my coworkers looked out for me. Chloe was still out there somewhere, probably still blaming me for everything, but she couldn't get to me anymore, and I didn't spend my days worrying about what she might do next. And that's today's lesson tucked inside the story. Hopefully you walk away with something useful, even if it's small. That's what makes it worth sharing. Subscribe if you'd like to keep learning with me.